So that was exciting. She's kind of cute too, look at that.
Starting to research facts behind some of the doctrines and reading supposed apostate material or watching videos.
It's really astonishing. People will be astonished to find out that whatever everything about why it's wrong and complete crap has been known for a very long time. It's kind of a shocking thing to realize.
By the way, according to Jehovah's Witnesses, any research you do outside of their organization is considered apostasy. So there's really no way around it in their thinking. But I've come to realize that there are so many teachings that just don't add up.
Literally! They got the math wrong. It's like, whatever, don't add up. Whatever, it's supposed to be like, that's supposed to be kind of a saying, or like not literally the meaning of the saying. Watchtower, that's literally true. They did the math wrong. You don't even have to get into the fact that the notion that you're going to calculate when Jesus would come back, is completely insane. You don't even have to get into. That's my favorite thing about this. In fact, I would have a very hard time. I don't have a dog in the fight, right? I just don't care. I don't have an opinion. If people are wrong about God, I couldn't care less. It's not my problem. Lots of people are wrong about God. The thing about the Watchtower that puts us in my lane, like, firmly, is that they're lying to people about true facts. That has nothing to do with the fact that they're, the fact that their interpretation of the Bible is completely horseshit. You don't even have to touch that. You know how hard it would be for me to get excited about it if it was just about interpreting religious concepts? I just well, yeah, probably not. That's probably, they come up with their interpretation of the Bible, like, yeah, that's probably not the way it is. You're probably incorrect. It's probably not a description of reality. The fact that they're screwing people over literally not adding up, literally getting the math wrong, literally getting true facts wrong, it just paints the picture very clearly that they're screwing people to keep their shit true, and it's not even a matter. Lots of religions screw people to keep their shit true, but there are very few religions that you can prove with math are complete horseshit, and that the sole purpose of screwing people is to keep their horseshit true. Because if you know they're horseshit, then there isn't any debate to be had. They're just straight up wrong, and they're keeping their shit true. Page 25. The picture here is drawn is remarkably distorted to create a false impression. It speaks of the research that went into the aid to Bible understanding as being done under the supervision of the governing body, and conveys the ideas of smoothness of direction from a body of men motivated by intense concern to hold to the scriptures. In reality, the aid book was neither initiated nor supervised by any governing body of the time, with the Watchtower Corporation president Nathan Knorr. And though he initiated the project, any actual direction by him was very detached and a limited one, since any real direction was done through Carl Adams, the overseer of the writing department. Nor neither developed this list of subjects to include the book, or supervised the assigning of them, nor its development. All assignments to the subject were originated by and made by Carl Adams. Adams was neither a member of the governing body, nor, for that matter, of those called the Anointed. So the faithful and discreet slave that they won't tell you who they are? One of the reasons is that if you find out who they are, you'll find out that they claim that the faithful and discreet slave is the anointed people. Again, let's get how did Joe? I asked this question a lot when I was little, and I just kind of got a grimace. Sorry, Dad. I asked at a memorial, how did the anointed know they're anointed? There must be a God. I think it's the. There's just something, again, that's what it comes to, is that, the uncomfortable shit just kind of goes, nobody wants to be a buzzkill, right? We're Jehovah's Witnesses, we stand up and in the midst of the, spiritual crack that's being smoked, and the, enthusiasm for, it's just to be a buzzkill in the midst of obtuse propaganda is just a really hard thing to do, and there's not really any you can't really ask the question. You can't really answer the question of how do the anointed know they're anointed, you can't answer that question in any way that doesn't sound like just complete horseshit, so it usually doesn't get answered. I got a grimace. Let's not think about that. It reminds me, people have been questioning my authority to command the vast apostate army, to raise the vast apostate army from the dry bones. How the hell do you think you have the authority to do that? God had me appoint myself. Of those who shared personally and directly in the act he did, do you think I could defy the will of God? I would never claim something crazy like God appointed me. God had me appoint myself. And directly in that, I get a kick out of people who are like, whatever, there's people getting upset at me about like, who does this guy think he is? God had me appoint myself. What's the problem? Directly in actual research and writing of articles for the aid book, Lyman Swingle, and from the corporation's board of directors, was the only one who could be considered a governing body member. And his assignments came from Carl Adams, and he worked under the Adams supervision, turning in whatever he wrote to Carl for editing and approval, as was true for the rest of us working on the project. Nathan Knorr and Fred Franz eventually read some of the finished articles, but Knorr left it up to Carl Adams to select whatever articles Carl felt they ought to read. These were remarkably few. As stated, when the subjects of the older man, elder, and overseer were assigned to me, I received the assignments. In the assignments were those titles, nothing more. I was not then a member of the governing body, and what developed was not a result of any guidance from any governing body, or even Carl Adams, my uncle Fred Franz, and some input, but only as a result of my personal initiative, and his subsequent actions seemed almost denial of the input. It was quite evident that the results of my research was something unexpected, even viewed as not particularly desirable by either Nathan Knorr or Fred Franz. What you're going to hear in this book is about Raymond Franz is a member of the governing body. He's telling stories about how it's not just a matter of him telling stories about I think I'm right and I think they're wrong. It's a story about how he is one of the anointed people. He is the faithful and discreet slave. He is. He's on a body of people who are running God's organization for God. He got disfellowship for disagreeing with the organization. One of the guys running the organization got disfellowship for disagreeing with the organization. So the true believers go all the way to the top, meaning the governing body itself thinks that the organization is controlling them. They think they're obeying the organization too. They're running the organization. They think they're obeying the organization. They're steering the ship, and they think the ship is steering them. So it shouldn't be that surprised when it runs aground, right? People steering the ship think that the ship is steering them. So they can't, they have a severe problem with, for the people running the ship to turn the ship, the people running the ship feel like that would be being disloyal to the ship, to turn the ship when they're at the wheel. So what the hell? We'll just tell... There's lots of stories about we'll tell disabled people they can't eat out their wife to get her off. God doesn't like that, so... No, it clearly says in the Bible that oral sex is wrong. I've heard, I can hardly believe this. Apparently the Watchtower has re-legalized oral sex. So if you're a dub, you can get a blowjob now. I haven't researched that yet, but somebody claims you can get a blowjob now. The governing body couldn't make that decision when Raymond Franz was there. Clearly states in the Bible that missionary style. And don't get too fancy with the thrusting. That research, it says so in the Bible. That research revealed in the arrangement of relating to elders and congregational direction in Bible times. Do you understand that people get in trouble for... Can you imagine a situation where where you try pull some freaky shit in the bedroom and your wife goes and tells on you? He tried to get me to... It says so in the Bible. Raising elders in congregational direction in Bible times was very different from the position held by Jehovah's Witnesses, where a more or less monarchical arrangement prevailed. Each congregation was under the supervision of a single individual, a congregation servant, or a congregation overseer. The term overseer applied only to him, and any others were viewed as his assistants. So their organizational structures changed a lot over time too. So, like the continuation of Bible Times, of the Bible Times true organization on Earth, the true organization on Earth that had lots of opinions about how the true organization ought to be run. The scriptural arrangement, the coordinator, the changing of a presiding overseer to a coordinator of the body of elders is another attempt to readjust things. And actually in the direction that Raymond Fran's research suggested it should be. That's what he's talking about here. The scriptural arrangement of body of elders had been suddenly ended in 1932 by Judge Rutherford due to a lack of cooperation on the part of some elders within the society's programs and policies. So they had some disagreements, so I said, fuck this! It's what evidence of, like, we need to make it more authoritarian. His position as president gave Rutherford the necessary authority to take such a stand, and all congregations were invited to vote for the disbanding of bodies of elders and their replacement by a society-appointed service director. Sounds like Gaddafi. Destroy all independent institutions and make them, whatever, accountable only to you. That's how dictators work. Rutherford did that. We're gonna disband the closest thing to a government that the congregations had and replace it with a society-appointed service director. For the next 40 years, there were no bodies of elders in the congregations. You aware of that? There was no bodies of elders. There was just one guy, appointed by the society. That is why the New World Translation of the Bible, published by the societies in 1950, regularly used the terms rendering older men rather than elders, then officially discredited term. So the reason why the New World Translation doesn't say elders, it says older men, is because of Rutherford's attitude about not having bodies of elders. They call it a body of elders now. Most witnesses probably don't understand that that's changed. They think that it's been this way, the way it is now, forever, and it hasn't been. Somewhat disturbed by what my research revealed, I approached my uncle with evidence. His response took me by surprise. Don't try to understand the scriptures on the basis of what you see today in the organization, he said, and added, keep the aid book pure. There's like cult spady thoughts going on there. I'd always looked upon the organization as God's one channel for dispensing truth, and so this council sounded unusual to say the least. When I pointed out that the Society's New World Translation rendering of Acts chapter 14 verse 23 evidently inserted the words to office in connection with the appointment of elders, and that this somewhat altered the sense, he said, why don't you check it in some of the other translations that might not be as biased? Fred Franz called the New World Translation biased. Let's read that again. When I pointed out the Society's New World Translation rendering of Acts chapter 14 verse 23 evidently inserted the words to office in connection with the appointment of elders, and that this somewhat altered the sense, he said, why don't you check it in some other translations, meaning of the Bible, that may not be as biased as ours is? Fred Franz said so. Snarky Apologist, page 27, footnote 26. You gonna eat that shit up? Fred Franz of the New World Translation is biased. I know you wouldn't be caught dead with that translation, but you should whip it open and talk about how Acts chapter 14 verse 23, Fred Franz called it biased. Just check a translation of the Bible that isn't as biased as ours is. That hasn't been altered like ours has. I walked out of his office wondering if I'd actually heard what I had heard. In future days, I was to remind him of these statements on more than one occasion during governing body sessions. So yeah, like a good apostate, Raymond Franz held it over his head that he called the New World Translation biased. Admit it, let's like, I'm trying to think of like what, oh, somebody told me that you should go to the service meeting so you can learn how to do sales. You're a bad salesman. You should go to the service meeting to learn from the Watchtower Society how to be a good salesman. I got that criticism from a dub once. You need to learn how to be a good salesman, like we are. Page 27, halfway down.